I'm going to say out loud something a lot of people with bipolar disorder think and almost never admit. Ready? Sometimes you miss it. You miss the mania, not the hospital, not the wreckage, not the frightened faces of the people you love, but that feeling when the world went from black and white to color, when ideas arrived like fireworks, when you felt finally completely alive. If you've ever felt that quiet pull and then felt ashamed that you felt it, this video is for you. Here is the first thing I need you to hear. Missing it does not mean you are broken. It does not mean you are ungrateful for how far you've come. And it does not mean you're dangerous. It is one of the most common and least talked about parts of living with this illness. And understanding why you miss it is exactly how you keep it from pulling you back under. And by the end, I want to leave you with something better than a warning. The one shift that lets you keep the things you actually miss, the aliveness and the spark without the illness strapped to them. Stay with me for that. It's where this is going. I'm Clara from Bipolar Clarity. Let's take a breath and talk about the thing nobody talks about. So let's be honest about what mania seemed to give you. Because pretending it gave you nothing is a lie. And you know it's a lie. And that's exactly why the just stay on your med speech never quite reaches this part of you. At its best, in its early hours, mania can feel like the volume of life turned all the way up. Energy without a floor, confidence without a question, ideas pouring faster than you can catch them. A sense that you are, at last, the fullest version of yourself. And you're not the only one who's felt this. Redfield Jamison is a psychiatrist who has lived with bipolar disorder her whole life. She called her early manias absolutely intoxicating. She described the illness itself as seductively complicated, a distillation both of what is finest in our natures and of what is most dangerous. Read that again. What is finest in our natures? When something feels like the finest version of you, of course a part of you grieves losing it. So let's name it clearly. When you miss mania, you are not craving an illness. You're missing a feeling. Those are not the same thing. And that difference is where your safety lives. And for a lot of people, the thing they miss most isn't full-blown mania at all. It's hypomania, the milder high, the few weeks when colors seemed brighter and sounds seemed richer, when you were funny and fast and magnetic, when you got more done before noon than most people manage in a week. It never landed you in a hospital. It didn't look like an illness. It looked like your best self on your best day. And the psychiatrist, Aiken, makes a point worth sitting with. The very genes tied to these mood conditions have survived, generation after generation. And one likely reason is that in small doses, they carry something genuinely valuable right alongside the risk. So if part of you suspects those highs held something real, you're not deluded. They did. That is exactly what makes hypomania the hardest thing to give up. And the most important to understand. Because it never announces itself as danger. It shows up disguised as a gift. There's a deeper layer under all of this too. Sometimes you're not just missing a feeling, you're missing a self, the bold one. The one who spoke up, took the leap, lit up the room, wasn't afraid of anything. And grieving a lost version of yourself is a far heavier thing than missing a good mood. But here is what I need you to hold on to. That boldness, that spark, that warmth, those were yours. The illness didn't grant them to you. It borrowed them, and it charged brutal interest. Which means you can build them back, on purpose, in a life that stays steady. The confidence can be real this time. It just doesn't have to arrive with a crash strapped to its back. Because here is the turn. Here is the part I really need you to hold on to. Nostalgia is a liar. Memory keeps the highlight reel and quietly deletes the bill. It saves the fireworks and edits out the crash that always came after. Jamison used one perfect word for it: illusion. She said the racing ideas gave her at least the illusion of carrying them out. They felt brilliant at 3 a.m. But how many survived contact with the morning? So when you replay the highs, you have to play the whole tape. The high never arrived alone. It always ran a tab. The debt, the burned bridges, the words you can't unsay, the depression waiting on the other side like a bill coming due. You didn't get the color without the collapse. They were the same thing. And that's why the missing can be dangerous, not the feeling itself. The story, the feeling tells. Maybe it wasn't so bad. Maybe I was just more creative back then. Maybe I don't really need these meds. That is the pull. And I want you to learn to recognize it as a pull, not a plan. So what do you actually do with it? Not shame it, not pretend it away. You work with it. First, say it out loud, to yourself and to one person you trust. Shame keeps this powerful in the dark. Spoken, it shrinks. I miss my mania is a sentence you are allowed to say. The people who can really help you are the ones who know this pull exists. Second, keep the whole ledger. Once, while you're well and clear, write down the full story of an episode. Not just the highs, the whole thing, in your own words, including the damage and the climb back out. Keep it somewhere you can find it. Then, when nostalgia comes knocking, you read it. You let past you, who was there, tell present you the truth that the feeling is trying to erase. Third, grieve it honestly. Jamison mourned the loss of that intense electric self. You're allowed to, too. Missing something is not the same as choosing it. Grief is actually how you set it down without acting on it. You let yourself feel the loss instead of chasing the thing. Fourth, and this one matters most, and it's the shift I promised you at the start. Build a life that isn't gray. Because here's a reframe worth handing you early. Stability is not supposed to feel like a flat, colorless nothing. If your stable life feels dead, that is not the price of getting well. It's a signal that something real is missing. Go find it. Work that absorbs you. People who light you up. Movement, music, meaning. A project that pulls you forward. Real aliveness. The kind you get to keep, that doesn't send a bill, and one line about safety. Because I'd never skip it. If the missing ever hardens into, I don't need my medication, if the pull starts to feel less like a memory and more like a plan, or if your thoughts turn dark, that is the moment to tell your person or your clinician. Today, not next week. If you don't feel safe, the link in the description will connect you with real support right now. So let me say the honest thing one more time, without an ounce of shame in it. Missing your mania doesn't make you sick or weak or a failure at recovery. It makes you human. Someone who lived through something extraordinarily intense and came out the other side. Stability isn't the absence of aliveness. Done right, it is the aliveness you finally get to keep, without the bill ever coming due. And if you'd like some gentle company for the long walk of staying well, I send out the Bipolar Clarity newsletter. One honest, doable reminder each week that a steady life can still be a life fully lived. It's free, and you're always welcome. The link is in the description. If part of what you miss is that spark, the energy, the lift, the video on your screen will show you how to catch the earliest signs when that spark starts to tip into something bigger, so you stay in the driver's seat instead of along for the ride. I'll see you there, and until then, be gentle with yourself. The fact that you're still here, choosing the harder, quieter kind of alive, says everything about you.